Hi Lucas,
Hello, Mauricio. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm good, thank you. Lucas, one of the most hardest hit industry during the pandemic has been airlines. According to IATA estimates, the road back to a new normality could take as long as 3 years in domestic flights and 4 years in international routes. Even if the IATA base case scenario gets right, profitability can be affected by new health policy measures or overcapacity. What is BTG's view on this medium term scenario? Do you think this new normal is going to take that long? And do you consider the industry profitability will be structurally lower?
Yes, of course. Definitely, airline industry will be severely impacted by COVID. We see some trends taking place in the sector that will reshape the aircraft demand or the air traffic demand for the next coming quarters or years. One interest aspect to discuss on the airline industry is that the international traveling will be very much reduced afterwards COVID because some countries will remain with their borders shut and some sanitary specialists will recommend air traveling to be reduced, so will definitely impact the volumes on the overall industry, right? Also, we see some changes in the way people behave, right? I mean, business traveling, for instance, some of the executives or some of the managers will definitely travel less than they used to travel before COVID because we now adapt to making business meeting to make calls through digital features or to digital devices like this one, right? So this also will impact the way air traffic demand is set for the after crisis period. One thing that we think is worthwhile highlighting is that besides also avoiding international traveling, we think that the long hour flights will also be transferred to, let's say, short distance routes. So people won't like to travel 8-9 hours in an airplane with a face mask on. So we think this will also be transferred into short distance routes, 1, 2, or 3 hours flight at most, right? So this is some of the changes that we think will take place in the industry. We are pretty much aligned on what IATA, which is the International Aviation Association, is saying. They are saying that we are only supposed to recover the 2019 market levels by 2023, which means a very slow market rebound, and we do agree with that because of this international market downsizing and also the change on the way that business travelers operate. But one point we think is worthwhile highlighting is regarding your last question, Mauricio, regarding profitability, right? Definitely it will be damaged because this market downsize will offer let's say, a considerable challenge for the companies to remain profitable in this new market scenario. So it will force the companies to revise their business models in order to remain flexible, in order to remain profitable, in order to remain with a lean cost structure. So we do see some reshaping in profitability levels, and we do expect that over the next 1 or 2 years, overall sector's profitability will be below the pre-crisis level. Okay.
Okay, so then as we can review in the financial press, Chapter 11 is a must known concept in the foreseeable future. Highly levered industries, both financial and operational, clearly cannot serve this crisis without being recapitalized, putting off their debt payments, or getting government bailouts. However, aircraft leasing has been one of the cornerstones of this business, but it is still under the radar in the financial community. Considering that one of the most flexible types of debt is the operational leasing contract, what is your view on that side of the business?
Well, Mauricio, I mean, I think it's fair to say that the leasing industry is as much damaged as the airline industry during the COVID, right? Actually, while we are already seeing some demand rebound for air traveling, we are not seeing any rebound in aircraft business, right? So it leaves the lessors into a worse situation versus airline industry. But looking further, I mean, trying to surpass COVID, definitely the aircraft leasing remains the most viable mechanism for airlines to adapt their fleet and to operate their aircraft throughout the different market densities and the different market size each one of their airlines operates, right? So we do not envisage a transferring from lessors to any other type of aircraft managing, right? So we do expect leasing companies to remain very much important in the airline industry, also obviously facing some downsides, let's say for 2020, 2021, and probably 2022 as well. But one thing we think is worthwhile highlighting is that as we're going to see in airline business, it's very much likely that we are also going to see some consolidation in leasing industry as well, right? So probably capital will be reallocated into the most profitable operations, not only in terms of leasing, but throughout all the layers of the airline industry. So the most profitable airlines are supposed to have the higher capital allocation. The most profitable aircraft producers will have the same, and this goes to for the most profitable leasing operators. So we do expect some consolidation in the short term, facing and responding to this new market scenario. Okay.
Good, great. So let's move on to Latin America, where Brazil's geography is probably one of the best attributes to expect a guaranteed growth in terms of ASK in the next 10 years. Indeed, the similarities with the US could make it appears to be a safe bet place for international carriers who want to participate in such a big market. However, reality has consistently proven that the local market environment is highly competitive, and turning around a complex business is a long shot. How much do you consider the local market is about to change in the next 2 years?
Well, definitely the market downsides we're gonna see in global scenario will also be replicated into the domestic market in Brazil for sure, right? Especially when regarding international traveling, which will be in pressure for the next years, also regarding the business traveling. But as you said, I mean, you're right in saying that the domestic market in Brazil should be, let's say, the faster rebounding segment, because we do have a large geographic portion which allows the domestic market to rebound first. Also, something interesting to comment is that especially those regions with lower contamination levels will be the ones with increasing volume demand for air traveling. So especially regional routes to the southern and also to the Midwest region of Brazil, where contamination is today lower, right? Again, it's very much important for the international traveling for Brazil to Brazil be able to state more strongly how the country is managing the COVID situation. So international traveling will only rebound when the sanitary measures in Brazil are very much in place. So that's why we see domestic traveling rebounding first. But another point that we think is worth highlighting is that not all the companies will come out of COVID stronger than before, right? So we do expect some bankruptcies. Actually, we are already seeing some movements in this direction. So it's very much important for the local carriers to try to fit into this new competitive landscape, so then can try to obtain new market share gains and try to let's say outperform their peers that are facing financial difficulties, right? So it's very much important for the airlines to have a flexible business model, to be able to downsize their cost structure, and also to reinforce and improve liquidity levels so they can be able to strive through the crisis. Okay, that's why we think again, we do not expect all the airlines to survive, That's something that is pretty much common to airline industry. We have already seen some bankruptcies in the past, and definitely COVID will not be the last bankruptcy event in the airline industry. But again, it is important for companies at this time to reinforce their business model and also to reinforce how flexible they can be during crisis periods.
Okay, last but not least, do you consider that all of the risks that we're discussing here are correctly priced in on the airline stocks? It is the right timing to jump and add airline companies in an equity portfolio?
Look, Mauricio, any equity investment in any airline requires a lot of edge and a lot of knowledge into some of the most important variables that affect the business, right? And to mention what we think is the two most important variables is to mention the FX, the foreign exchange ratio, and also the oil price. So it's very important for you or for any investors willing to make a position in an airline stock to have an edge or to have an opinion on what's going to be the behavior of the oil price and what's going to be the behavior of FX. This is very important for the cash generation of an airline, so it's important for any investors to have an opinion on that. Regarding the companies specifically and the stock picking, we think this process, this cherry picking process, is more important than ever right now during COVID because, as we said before, we do not envisage all airlines surviving through COVID. So some players will survive and others don't. So we do see some winners and losers. So it's important for the investors to be able to stock pick among the airline companies. And in our view, we think is highly recommended for investors to choose companies that are flexible enough to strive and to adapt their business model during the crisis. Companies that have liquidity and sound balance sheet positions to not struggle during these crisis periods, and also to have aircraft flexibility to reduce and downsize when is demanded or when is requested for them to downsize. So this stock picking is very much important, and we do recommend investors to look for companies that have superior business models with higher flexibility and stronger balance sheet positions. Okay, Mauricio?
Okay, thank you, Lucas.
Thank you, Mauricio. It was a pleasure to join you guys, and whenever you need it, just give us a call.
Great, bye.